Hello, Cowboys Nation. Welcome back to the channel. Now, as you know, the season hasn't been exactly as we hoped, but this team is pushing hard, looking to improve and make the necessary adjustments to turn things around. With the trade deadline fast approaching, we have some big news straight from Jerry Jones himself about what the Cowboys might, or might not, be looking to do. Before we dive into all the details, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on everything Cowboys. Alright, let's jump right in. Jerry Jones recently sat down with 105.3 The Fan and gave us a little insight into what he's thinking as the trade deadline on November 5th looms closer. Now, as you guys know, the Cowboys are 3-4 this season. It's not the record we hoped for, and Jones himself has acknowledged that this season has been a tougher journey than he anticipated. For us fans, it's been challenging to watch our team struggle with consistency and injuries, and now we're all wondering if the front office is finally ready to make some moves to help get us back on track. Jerry had this to say: "We're looking for meat on the bone that can improve our team." Now, that's a little different from his stance earlier in the season when he expressed confidence in our current roster and coaching staff. So, what changed? Maybe it's the mounting injuries on defense, maybe it's the lack of depth in certain positions, or maybe Jerry is feeling the urgency to get the Cowboys back on the playoff path. But what does this mean for the Cowboys' approach to the trade deadline? Let's break it down. One of the biggest challenges we're facing right now is on the defensive side of the ball. We're missing some key players, like Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Marshawn Kneeland. Although these guys might be back sometime this season, their absence has left our defense stretched thin. Right now, we're ranked 31st in scoring defense, and let's be real, this is a defense that could use some serious reinforcement. Let's not forget the situation with cornerbacks. The recent return of Darren Bland was overshadowed by Trayvon Diggs' lingering calf issue, which is keeping him out. The injuries to these guys have really shown in our games. We're not getting the stops we need, and teams are putting up points on us at a rate that's hard to overcome, even with a strong offensive performance. This means that if the Cowboys want to make a deep playoff run, they might need to bring in some defensive help now rather than hoping for injured players to return in time. On the offensive side, we could use some depth in a few areas as well. Right now, our passing attack is ranked 3rd in the league, which is fantastic, but we're lacking balance. Depth at the running back position is looking thin, and if we could bring in a solid player here, it might just take some of the pressure off the passing game. The offensive line is another area we need to look at. With Zack Martin dealing with injuries off and on, our line hasn't been as stable as we'd like it to be. Adding a strong O-line piece could make a world of difference, helping to protect Dak and create those crucial running lanes. Now, we all know CeeDee Lamb has been balling out as our primary receiver, but beyond him, our options are a little limited. The front office has already seen 4 wide receivers moved in trades, so there's clearly some interest around the league. The Cowboys may consider adding another wide receiver to support Lamb, giving Dak more targets and helping spread the field to open up opportunities in the run game. Improving any one of these aspects could make a big difference in the second half of the season, though reaching that coveted 12-5 record like we've had the last few years is looking more and more difficult. Let's get into the coaching situation because, let's face it, this season's outcome could determine the future of Mike McCarthy as head coach. Jerry Jones has been clear. He wants results, and this season hasn't gone as planned. Last year's wild card loss at home to the Packers left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and that's exactly why McCarthy didn't get an extension. The Cowboys' performance for the remainder of the season will directly impact whether McCarthy stays or goes. If the team can make a playoff push, his job might be secure. But if things continue on this rocky path, it could mean big changes at the top, and Jones may decide it's time to part ways with McCarthy, potentially even before the season ends. A rental trade might not be a long-term solution, but it could boost our playoff chances and help secure McCarthy's position, for now. If a trade brings in the right kind of spark and we make a late-season push, it might just save McCarthy's job. However, if things don't turn around, the Cowboys may be looking at a complete coaching staff overhaul by season's end. Here's where things get a little tricky. The Cowboys actually have room under the cap to make a trade that could impact the rest of this season. However, if they're looking at bringing in someone with a contract that extends beyond 2024, things could get complicated when the offseason rolls around. Contracts for players like Parsons, Lawrence, and Zack Martin would need to be adjusted to make room, which could create more challenges down the line. So, while it's possible for the Cowboys to make a big splash in the trade market, they have to be strategic. If they're going to add a player, It needs to be someone who can provide immediate help without creating long-term salary cap headaches. If the Cowboys don't pull off a strong comeback in the second half of the season, it seems almost inevitable that changes are coming for this coaching staff. Right now, McCarthy is essentially a lame duck coach, as his contract runs out after this season. And while the all-in mentality sounded great at the start of 2024, it's beginning to feel more like a slogan that might fade along with the season. Think about it. Without that incredible comeback against the Baltimore Ravens, this team could have been looking at 3 blowout losses already this season. And if the injuries on defense continue to be an issue, this weekend's matchup against the high-powered Atlanta Falcons could be yet another challenge. The Falcons are averaging 24 points a game, and in the last 3 weeks, our defense has been giving up an average of 31 points. If things go south on Sunday, it might be time for Jerry Jones to start thinking about immediate changes in the coaching staff. This means we could see McCarthy on his way out, and coordinators like Mike Zimmer and Brian Schottenheimer could also be at risk of losing their positions. Cowboys fans, this is a team that came into the season with high hopes, but right now, it feels like they've been set up for disappointment. And if things don't improve soon, the coaching staff could be the first to take the fall. With the trade deadline right around the corner, rumors are swirling about possible moves the Cowboys could make. One rumor, though, is particularly shocking: the possibility of parting ways with none other than 9-time Pro Bowler Zack Martin. Yeah, you heard that right. Some analysts are suggesting that Dallas might consider trading Martin to free up cap space and bring in some draft picks that could help build for the future. Now, before we go further, let's remember that Martin isn't just any player. He's been a rock for this team, a staple of our offensive line, and he's accomplished more than most players dream of: 9 Pro Bowl selections, 7 first-team All-Pro honors, and a spot on the 2010 All-Decade team. If you're thinking, there's no way we'd move on from him, you're not alone. But let's dive into why this suggestion is even being discussed. The reality of the Cowboys' season and playoff picture. Right now, we're sitting at 3-4 after a tough loss to the San Francisco 49ers. That loss didn't just hurt the record, it also hurt us in the NFC playoff standings. In a tight NFC race, every win and loss matters, and that defeat put us below .500. If we're being honest, the road to the playoffs is going to be a rough one from here on out. The Cowboys are invested in their roster and in quarterback Dak Prescott, so it's highly unlikely they'd give up on the season entirely. But if a deep playoff run seems out of reach, would it make sense for the team to think strategically about the salary cap and potential draft capital? Analysts like Chris Partee from Fansided suggest that making a move to offload part of the payroll could allow Dallas to gain valuable draft picks that could build for the future. And with Zack Martin's contract at $15.5 million this season and $10.5 million in 2025, trading him could offer some immediate cap relief. This is where things get interesting and emotional. Moving Zack Martin would not be an easy decision for anyone in the Cowboys organization or for us as fans. He's been a cornerstone of our offensive line, a leader, and one of the most respected players on the team. But Partee's argument is that Martin, now 33, might not be playing at his peak anymore, even though he still has plenty left in the tank. The Cowboys' offensive line hasn't been as dominant this season, and while that can't be solely attributed to Martin, it does raise questions about whether the current setup is giving Dak and the offense the protection they need. Trading Martin might seem drastic, but it could open up cap space and potentially land us a couple of decent draft picks in return. Those picks, in turn, could help build the roster in areas where we're currently struggling, like defensive depth or the offensive line itself. Let's take a moment to appreciate what Zack Martin means to this franchise. He's one of the most accomplished guards in the game, and his loyalty and performance over the years have earned him a permanent spot in Cowboys history. Trading him would be monumental, both because of his talent and his connection to Dallas fans. It's hard to imagine a Cowboys team without Martin anchoring that line, but in the business of football, tough decisions sometimes have to be made. The flip side of this is Martin's own ambitions. One thing missing from his impressive career is a Super Bowl ring. There's no question he'd love to win one with the Cowboys, but with the current trajectory, a championship this season feels like a long shot. If Martin has a shot at a ring elsewhere, should the Cowboys consider giving him that opportunity by trading him to a contender? The Cowboys are proud, and rightfully so. This is a team with a legacy, and there's a lot of money tied up in players like Dak Prescott. Betting on the season is in Dallas's DNA, but if a deep playoff push seems out of reach, it might be time to think about retooling and setting ourselves up for future success. Our team has areas that could use a boost, and if trading Martin means getting the right draft picks to address those needs, it could be a smart, albeit painful, move. An elite offensive line has always been a Cowboys trademark, but it might be time to consider what the future of that line looks like without Martin at the helm. For us as fans, this is a tough one. Keeping Martin means sticking with a player who's been loyal and instrumental in the team's success. It means believing that this season can still be salvaged and that Martin's presence will be key in making that happen. But if the front office is realistic about where the season is headed, trading Martin could be a step toward building a stronger younger team that can contend for years to come. There's also the question of what we'd get in return. While it's unlikely we'd secure a high-round pick, even a mid-round draft pick could bring in fresh talent or depth. That's something our team needs if we want to stay competitive, especially in a tough NFC. We can't forget about Martin's perspective here, either. If this season doesn't pan out, Martin may very well be thinking about his legacy. He's done almost everything in his career, but a Super Bowl ring has eluded him. Perhaps a trade would give him the chance to chase that ring on a team that's already positioned for a deep playoff run. Imagine Martin going to a team with a strong roster, giving him a real shot at a championship in the twilight of his career. Would he want that? Would the Cowboys grant him that opportunity? Or is there still hope that Dallas can turn things around with Martin leading the way on the line? So, what do you think, Cowboys Nation? Should Jerry make a big move before the deadline, or should we stick with what we have? How much of a difference do you think a trade would make for this team's playoff chances? And what about McCarthy's future? Do you think he deserves to stay, or is it time for a new face to lead this team? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this update, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Cowboys news and updates. Thanks for tuning in, Cowboys Nation. Here's hoping for a strong second half of the season.